I was scrolling Instagram on a lazy Sunday morning, still in bed, still wearing the engagement ring he gave me 2 months ago. My thumb froze. My heart dropped. There it was, a picture of my ex smiling wide, down on one knee, holding out a ring box to another woman. A blonde I'd never seen before. She was crying, hand over her mouth, clearly saying yes. His caption read, "She said yes. Can't wait to spend forever with you." I stared at the screen, my mouth open, stomach twisting. The ring in the photo, it wasn't just similar. It was the same ring, same antique setting, same tiny chip on the side of the band I always meant to get fixed. I held up my hand. I looked at the ring on my finger, then back at the screen. I didn't move for a full minute. We'd broken up 6 weeks ago. No real explanation. He'd come home one night, said, "This isn't working," packed a bag and left. Just like that. No yelling. No tears. He wouldn't answer my texts after. No closure. I thought maybe he was going through something. Maybe he needed time. Turns out, he needed someone else. I sent him a screenshot of the post. Nothing else. Just the image. He replied, "Yeah, it's the same ring. I didn't think you'd care." Didn't think I'd care? I sat there, shaking, my mind trying to keep up with my heart. My face burned. My chest ached. I didn't cry, not yet. I just kept looking at the ring on my finger. This thing I thought meant something, that he promised meant something. Now it just felt disgusting. I ripped it off. My hands were trembling. I walked over to my dresser, pulled out the velvet box with the rest of the jewelry he'd given me, necklaces, earrings, a bracelet I wore once at Christmas. I dumped it all out on the bed. Then I opened the closet and found the dusty box his mom had given me last year, heirlooms. Silver, antique, supposedly for the future daughter-in-law. I dumped that too. I packed everything into one big box and taped it shut. I stood over it, breathing hard, heart pounding. I said out loud, "Screw this. I'm going to turn this into something no one can ever take from me." And for the first time in weeks, I felt something that almost felt like power. It started like every dream love story I used to believe in. He was charming, confident, thoughtful. He remembered small things I mentioned in passing. My favorite tea, how I liked the smell of lavender, the song that reminded me of my dad. He showed up with flowers just because, and made every date feel like a scene from a movie. Within a few weeks, he was telling me he could see our whole future together. "I've never felt like this before," he'd whisper. He talked about kids, house hunting, where we'd retire. He said I was his person, and I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. 6 months in, he asked me to move in. At the time, it felt romantic, like we were building something real. He said, "I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life." I had a steady job then, a marketing coordinator role I didn't love, but had worked hard to get. He told me I didn't need it anymore, that he made enough for both of us, that I should focus on my passions instead, that I deserved to rest. At first, it felt like love, like safety. But slowly, little things started to shift. He didn't like when I met friends without him. "I just miss you too much," he'd say. If I didn't answer a call right away, he'd text things like, "I guess I'm not a priority." He joked that certain clothes made me look too available. When I got a freelance gig, he acted supportive, but I caught him deleting emails when I left my laptop open. I stopped seeing friends. My phone got quieter. Life got smaller. He was the center of everything, and I didn't even notice when it started happening. When I brought up concerns, he'd say I was being sensitive, or paranoid, or selfish. Once, during an argument, I told him I felt like I was disappearing. He laughed and said, "No one else would ever love you like I do." He said it like it was comforting, but something about the way he looked at me when he said it chilled me, like a warning dressed as affection. Still, I stayed. I told myself this was what love looked like: compromise, devotion, growing pains. I thought all couples had hard patches, that maybe I just wasn't trying hard enough. Now, looking back, I see it for what it was. Not love, not safety, just a beautiful lie told by someone who knew exactly how to make me disappear. It was a Tuesday night. I remember because I had just made his favorite, lemon garlic chicken, mashed potatoes, and a bottle of red we'd been saving. He barely touched his plate. He sat across from me, silent, barely meeting my eyes. I asked if something was wrong. He nodded slowly, like he'd been rehearsing it in his head all day. "I need space," he said, voice flat. I laughed, thinking he was joking. "Space? From what?" He looked up then, and I knew it wasn't a joke. "It's not working," he said. "Things have changed." "What things?" I asked, heart thudding. "You've changed," he added, like it explained everything. "You're different. This isn't what I want anymore." I stared at him, waiting for more, something real, a reason, a clue. But he just kept saying things like, "I'm not happy," and "It's not you, it's me." Scripted lines. Empty. I asked if he was seeing someone else. He swore he wasn't. "I just need to be alone for a while." I told him we could work on it, that relationships go through hard seasons, that we could talk to someone, try something. He shook his head. And then, just like that, He went into the bedroom, grabbed a bag he'd already packed, and left. He'd planned it. I sat at the dinner table for hours. The food went cold. The wine turned bitter. I didn't cry right away. I was still trying to figure out what had just happened. The next morning, I texted him, "Can we talk?" No response. I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. Days passed. No word. Just silence. Like I never existed. I kept telling myself maybe he needed time. Maybe he was going through something. I made excuses for him. Told friends he just needed space. And that we were taking a break. But deep down, I knew something was off. A week later, I tried going by his place. His name was still on the door, but no one answered. I felt stupid. Like a ghost in my own story. Every night, I slept on one side of the bed, still wearing the ring. It felt heavy now, not romantic. Like it was pulling me down. One night, after another unanswered text, I slid down to the floor of our bedroom. No, my bedroom now, back against the wall, knees pulled to my chest. I stared at the ring on my finger and whispered, "What did I do wrong?" And of course, there was no answer. By the next morning, the Instagram post had blown up. Over 100 comments, and more pouring in by the minute. Mutual friends were tagging it, reposting it, reacting with heart emojis, and "so happy for you guys" comment. But then I saw my name. Buried in the comments, someone I hadn't talked to in a while had written, "Wait, didn't he give that ring to my name?" Another replied, "OMG, I thought the same thing?" Then a private message popped up. It was from someone I barely knew, a friend of a friend. "Hey, sorry if this is weird, but didn't you use to date his name? I swear that's your ring." I didn't answer. I just stared. More messages came. People I hadn't talked to in months. A college friend sent a side-by-side screenshot. One of me wearing the ring in a selfie from a few months back, and one from the proposal post. Identical. I finally replied to one person. "Yeah, that's my ring." That was all it took. Someone, I still don't know who, posted the screenshots to Reddit. Guy proposes to his new girl with the same ring he gave his ex. She finds out via Instagram. It blew up fast. My inbox exploded. People were messaging to tell me they were on my side, that it was insane, that I deserved better. Some shared their own horror stories. Some were just there for the drama. It felt surreal, watching strangers dissect your heartbreak like it was a TV show. But what cut deepest were the messages from people who knew him. One girl said he'd taken her out for drinks while we were still engaged. Another said she was pretty sure he'd been messaging her on a dating app last fall. It hit me like a slow, cold wave. He wasn't just lying about the ring. He'd been cheating, probably the entire time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there with my phone glowing in my lap, numb, watching the betrayal unravel in real time, piece by piece. I opened our last conversation, the one where he said he didn't think I'd care. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I pressed and held on his name, scrolled down, and hit delete contact. No more messages. No more excuses. No more name. Not a tear fell. Not a single one. But my hands were clenched so tight, my knuckles went white. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was furious. The ring sat on the kitchen counter for 3 days. I couldn't bring myself to touch it. Every time I walked past, I felt like it was watching me, like it was buzzing with some leftover poison. On the 4th morning, I picked it up, held it in my palm. It felt heavier than I remembered, like all the lies had sunk into the gold. I turned it over, staring at the tiny chip in the band, the same one I once thought gave it character. Now it just looked broken. I didn't think much. I just grabbed my keys, slipped the ring into my pocket, and drove to the nearest pawn shop. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't want to hear, "Are you sure?" Or, "Maybe you should keep it just in case." There was no case left. He'd smashed it. The place was small, dim, and smelled like metal and old carpet. The guy behind the counter looked up when I walked in. I dropped the ring on the glass and said, "I want to sell it." He picked it up, adjusted his glasses, and gave it a once-over. Then he pulled out a jeweler's loupe and really examined it. "This is quality," he said. "You know what you have here?" I didn't answer. He weighed it, checked the stone, made a few notes. 18, he finally said. I blinked. 100. He looked up. 1,000. I stared at him, my stomach flipping. That much? That was more than I made in 4 months at my old job, for something that now felt like trash. He asked if I needed time to think. I shook my head. "No," I said. "Let's do it." As he counted the money, a thought flickered. I could use this to travel, or pay rent for months, or buy something petty and ridiculous, like a designer bag, just to spite him. But another thought hit me, quieter but louder somehow. What if I built something with it? Something lasting, something good, something that had nothing to do with him. There was this dream I'd buried years ago. A little shelter for women, not a big one, just a warm, safe place for women starting over. I never had the funds or the time, but now I had a start. I walked out of the pawn shop into the sunlight, envelope of cash pressed against my chest. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like the beginning of something real. I didn't know the first thing about starting a shelter, but that didn't stop me. I spent the next 2 weeks researching nonstop. Grants, zoning laws, licensing, building codes. My browser history looked like I was trying to open a halfway house and survive a midlife crisis at the same time. Every cent from the ring, all $18,000 of it, became my seed money. I called it freedom funding in my notebook. I wasn't going to spend a dime on anything that didn't build something better than what I'd lost. After a few dead ends, I found a small building on the edge of a worn-down neighborhood. It used to be a dentist's office. Beige walls, cracked tile, faint smell of bleach still lingering. It had 3 rooms, 1 working bathroom, and a sagging front porch. The landlord thought I was crazy for wanting it. I signed the lease on the spot. For the next few months, I poured everything I had into that place. I watched DIY videos late into the night, learned to spackle drywall, paint trim, and rewire lamps without electrocuting myself. My hands were blistered, my jeans were always dirty, but I didn't care. The work made me feel alive again, useful. People started noticing. A woman from the corner bodega brought me tamales and asked what I was building. When I told her, she smiled and said, "About time someone opened a place like that." A few days later, she came back with her nephew. He used to be a contractor, said he'd help out for free. Another guy from the neighborhood showed up with old furniture he'd salvaged, said his ex left him for his best friend, and he figured someone might as well get something good out of it. Piece by piece, the shelter came to life. Fresh paint, mismatched couches, donated curtains. It wasn't fancy, but it felt warm, honest, real. I named it Second Chances. The name just felt right. For me, for the women who'd come through those doors, for the lives we were all trying to rebuild. No judgment, no shame, just a fresh start. One night, while hammering a final piece of trim into the hallway, I stopped and looked around at the space I'd made. The walls were still a little crooked, and the floors creaked, but it was mine. Every nail I hammered into that wall was for someone who got betrayed like I did, and every inch of it screamed, "You didn't break me, you built me." I didn't plan for any of it to go public. I was just trying to build something and move on quietly. But one of the volunteers posted about the shelter on Facebook. Just a quick story with a photo of me painting a wall, captioned, "From heartbreak to helping others." This woman turned her ex's betrayal into a home for women starting over. It got shared. A lot. A week later, a local reporter called, said she wanted to do a small segment on the evening news. I almost said no. I didn't want the attention, but she promised it would be about the shelter, not the drama. She showed up with a cameraman and a notebook. I gave her a tour, told her about the mission, talked about how it all started. She asked about the ring, and I gave her the short version, just enough to make the story stick. The piece aired 2 days later. Then things exploded. My phone buzzed nonstop. People from all over were reaching out, women wanting to donate, volunteer, or just say they'd been through something similar. The online headline read, "Woman sells ex's engagement ring, opens shelter for women in need." Then the bigger blogs picked it up. Then Twitter. Then TikTok. And that's when he texted me. It was the first message I'd gotten from him since the day I found out. It said, "You're being dramatic. This is embarrassing. Take it down." I stared at the screen for a full minute. Not angry, not hurt, just stunned by how small his words were. How weak, like he still thought he had some kind of control. I didn't respond. I didn't even block him. I just took a screenshot. Later that night, I printed it out, blew it up nice and big, bought a cheap frame from the dollar store and hung it right inside the office of the shelter, above my desk, where I could see it every day. A reminder, not of him, but of the voice I never have to listen to again. The next time a woman walked through our door crying over a man who told her she was too much or too dramatic, I pointed to the frame and said, "Me too." She laughed, then cried, then laughed again. And just like that, we got back to work. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when she walked through the front door of the shelter. I didn't recognize her at first, soaked hair clinging to her face, makeup smeared, eyes wide like she hadn't slept in days. But then I saw the ring. My ring, still on her finger. She looked at me, really looked. Her lip trembled. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. I nodded and led her inside without asking anything. Got her a towel, some tea, and dry clothes from the donation closet. She sat on the old couch in the common room, hands trembling as she held the mug. We didn't speak for a while. Then she finally said, "You're the one he was with before me, aren't you?" I sat down across from her. "Yeah," I said. "I was." She let out a weak laugh, the kind that hurts more than it helps. "I used to think you were crazy. The needy ex. That's how he talked about you." Of course he did. She started talking, and the story spilled out like water from a cracked pipe. How in the beginning he was perfect, romantic, thoughtful, sweet. How he said he'd never felt anything like what they had, that he'd finally found his person. Same lines, same act. Then things got weird. He didn't want her seeing certain friends. Said her family was toxic. Got angry when she didn't answer texts fast enough. Once accused her of flirting with a waiter. Screamed at her in the car for 20 minutes after dinner. I kept thinking it was me, she said. That I was too emotional. That I needed to be better. I heard myself in her voice. She stared down at the ring, twisting it on her finger. Last night he grabbed my arm. Not hard, but enough. Her voice broke. He said I made him do it. That I pushed him too far. I didn't say anything. I just reached out and gently took her hand. She cried then. And not the Dany TV kind. Big, guttural sobs that shook her whole body. I handed her tissues, sat next to her, and cried with her. Then somehow we laughed. About the ring. About the lies. About how we were both sold the same fantasy, like it was some clearance special. I told her she could stay the night. No judgment. No pressure. Just a safe place. She nodded. Thank you, she whispered. And in that moment, I realized something. The ring was never meant to last. But this shelter, this space we built from betrayal, it was already doing what? He never could. Healing. The sun was pouring through the front windows of the shelter, lighting up the mismatched couches and hand-painted walls. It didn't look polished or expensive, not even close. But it looked alive. It looked like hope. I stood at the front desk, coffee in hand, watching two of our newest residents laugh while unpacking a box of donated clothes. One of them was wearing a pair of boots I'd almost thrown out after the breakup. Somehow they looked better on her. It had been just over a year since I opened the doors to second chances. What started as one woman with a bruised heart and $18,000 in betrayal money had grown into something real. We had staff now, actual employees, a social worker, a counselor, a retired nurse who came in on weekends to do health checks. Volunteers rotated through daily, cooking meals, organizing donations, reading to kids. The local bakery sent over day-old pastries every Friday morning, still warm in the box. And every week, someone new found their way to us. Sometimes they came with nothing but a garbage bag full of clothes and tear-streaked cheeks. Other times they came angry, bitter, shut down, the way I had been. I knew that look. I never judged it. Instead, I sat with them. I listened. And when they were ready, I'd say, it's okay to start over. It doesn't mean you lost. It means you survived. A reporter came by again last month. Different one this time. Younger, fresh out of school, eager to get the story right. She asked thoughtful questions, took photos, and even helped carry a donation box inside. Before leaving, she looked around and said, "Do you ever regret selling the ring?" I smiled. Not out of pain. Just quiet clarity. It was never mine to keep, I told her. But this place? This is. Later that day, I walked past the office and glanced at the framed screenshot still hanging on the wall. His message, "You're being dramatic." It used to make me clench my jaw. Now, I barely felt anything when I looked at it. If anything, it made me proud. Because every woman who walked through these doors was told something like that. Too emotional. Too intense. Too dramatic. Too much. But here, they didn't have to shrink. Here, they got to begin again. And so did I. It had been months since I'd even thought about him. Life was full. The shelter was busy. The women kept me grounded. And my heart finally felt like it belonged to me again. So when he showed up at the front door, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked smaller. Not physically, but in energy. Shoulders hunched, hair messy, clothes wrinkled like he hadn't been sleeping much. He stood there awkwardly, holding nothing, like he didn't know where to put his hand. "I'm just here to talk," he said quietly. I didn't invite him in, but I stepped outside with him. The breeze was warm, and somewhere down the street, kids were laughing. He cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about what I did to you." I said nothing, just watched him. "I lost her," he continued. "The one I proposed to. She left me a few months ago. Said I needed help. That I was controlling." I almost smiled, but not out of spite. Just recognition. "I know I messed up," he said. "I just wanted to make amends." I nodded slowly. "You did." He looked confused. "I did." I gestured behind me, toward the shelter. "You paid for this place." He blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "The ring," I said. "The lies. The heartbreak. That was the down payment. For all of this." He looked past me, through the windows where a few women were sitting, drinking tea, talking softly. "Safe. You think I'm a monster," he muttered. I shrugged. "I don't think about you at all." We stood in silence. No yelling, no revenge speech. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. He shoved his hands into his pockets and nodded, like he understood. Maybe for the first time, he actually did. Then he turned and walked away. No big moment. Just small, quiet footsteps fading down the sidewalk. I stood there a while longer, watching until he disappeared around the corner. Then I walked back inside, where laughter was spilling down the hallway. In the common room, a few women were gathered with brushes and rollers, repainting one of the walls. A fresh coat, something lighter, softer. I grabbed a roller and joined them. We didn't need to say much. We just painted. Together.